Duke stopped dead in his tracks and refused to move another step. Marcus Hale had run this trail 100 times. He knew every route, every bend, every sound this forest made before sunrise. But he had never seen his German shepherd plant all 4 paws into the ground and tremble like something in those trees had already broken him. And then Marcus heard it. Not a scream, not a gunshot. Something worse. A woman's voice barely above the wind, using the last breath she had left to say 4 words that would change everything. They took the drive. If this story already has your heart pounding, you are exactly where you need to be. Subscribe to this channel right now and follow this story all the way to the end, because what Marcus and Duke do next shocked an entire military force. And drop a comment below telling me what city you are watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. Marcus Hale was not supposed to be in those woods that morning. His shift started at 7. His route took him down Millers Creek Road through the park, back up the Ridge Trail, and home in time to shower and badge in without being late. He had done it so many times that his legs knew the path before his brain gave the order. Duke ran beside him the way he always did, loose and easy, tongue out, ears soft. Until they weren't. The German shepherd stopped so abruptly that Marcus nearly tripped over him. Duke's whole body changed in an instant, ears forward, nose working, every muscle locked tight beneath his K9 vest. He was not looking down the trail. He was looking into the trees, into the dark space where the pines grew so thick that sunrise had not reached yet. Duke. Marcus kept his voice low. What is it, buddy? Duke did not look at him. He took 1 slow step forward, then stopped again, and made a sound Marcus had heard exactly once before on a call where they had found a missing child after 36 hours in the cold. It was not a bark. It was not a growl. It was something between the two. Something that lived in the part of a dog that humans could not train and could not explain. Marcus unclipped his radio. Dispatch, this is Officer Hale, badge 4471. I'm on the Ridge Trail off Cedar Fork. My K9 is alerting on something in the tree line. I'm going to check it out. Copy that. 4471. You need backup. He looked at Duke. Duke had already moved 2 steps into the trees without him. Not yet. I'll radio if I find something. He followed his dog. The ground was soft from 2 days of rain. His boots sank just enough to slow him down, and the branches were low, and the light was thin, and Duke moved like he already knew exactly where he was going. Marcus kept his hand near his holster, not because he expected to draw it, but because that was what his body did when his brain started calculating odds. 30 yards in. 40. Duke stopped. She was sitting against a pine tree, like she had simply decided to rest there. Her head was tilted back against the bark. Her right hand was pressed against her side, and the fabric beneath it was dark and wet, and Marcus knew the color of that dark even in bad light. He had seen it before. He had knelt beside it before. He was already moving before his mind caught up with his legs. Hey, I'm a police officer. My name is Marcus. Can you hear me? Her eyes opened. They were sharp, surprisingly sharp, the eyes of someone who had been trained not to go under, even when everything in their body was pushing them toward the dark. Don't. Her voice came out wrong, too thin, too careful. Don't call it in yet. Marcus had his fingers on her neck, already feeling her pulse. It was there. Fast and shallow, but there. His other hand found the wound at her side, and she flinched hard, but did not cry out. Ma'am, you've been shot. I need to call for an ambulance right now. Listen to me. She reached up and grabbed his wrist with a grip that surprised him. They are still close. If you call it in on an open channel, they will hear. Give me 30 seconds. He stared at her. Duke had pressed his whole body against her left side, warm and steady, and she had not told him to move. Her other hand was resting on his back like she had already accepted whatever comfort she could get. 30 seconds, Marcus said. Then I'm calling it. My name is Dana Flores. I'm FBI. There is a badge on my belt, check it. He found it. He looked at it. He handed it back. They took a drive, Dana said. A physical drive. It has 4 years of evidence on it. If they destroy it before I can get to my team, it's gone. All of it. Gone. Who took it? I don't know how many of them there are. I made contact 2 hours ago, and then something went wrong. She paused, and he could see the effort it took her just to keep her eyes open. I can't reach my handler. My phone is dead. I need you to make one call for me before you call your people. One call. Do you have a cell phone? I have my department radio and my personal cell. Cell service out here is garbage. How far to a signal? Quarter mile, maybe less. But I'm not leaving you for a quarter mile. You have to. No, ma'am, I really don't. Marcus pressed his hand firmer against her side, and she made a sound she clearly did not want to make. I need to stop this bleeding before we talk about anything else. How long ago were you shot? She closed her eyes for a second. Maybe 2 hours. Maybe 2.5. Where else are you hurt? Shoulder, left. I can move the arm so I don't think it hit bone. Can you walk? I couldn't an hour ago. I don't know now. Duke shifted beside her, and she tightened her hand on his fur without thinking about it. Marcus watched that happen, and something settled inside him the way it always did when he saw someone accept the dog without hesitation. It meant something to him. He could not explain why it always did, but it did. Okay, he said. Here is what we're doing. I have a first aid kit in my truck. It's not the best kit in the world, but it's better than a hand and a prayer. I can be back in under 8 minutes. Duke is going to stay with you. Her eyes opened again. Your dog? He won't let anything happen to you. I promise you that. You're going to leave a German Shepherd with me and run to your truck. He's not just a German Shepherd. He's the best partner I've ever had. Marcus stood. I need you to stay awake. Talk to him if you have to. He listens better than most people. He looked at Duke. Stay. Guard. Duke did not look at him. Duke was already watching the trees. Marcus ran. He ran harder than he had run in training, harder than he had run on any call, and his mind was doing what it always did under pressure, splitting into 2 tracks. One track was the girl against the pine tree with 2 bullet wounds and FBI credentials, and a story about a stolen drive. The other track was the forest around her, the space she had stumbled out of, the people she said were still close. He hit the trail and pushed harder. His truck was parked at the trailhead. He had the first aid kit out of the back before the door was fully open, and he had his personal cell in his hand, and he had 1 bar of signal, which was enough. He called dispatch on his cell instead of the radio. This is Officer Hale. I need a medical unit to Cedar Fork Trailhead off Millers Creek Road. Female adult, 2 gunshot wounds, approximately 2 to 3 hours old. She's conscious and responsive. Keep the channel quiet. I'll explain when you get here. Marcus, is this a code situation? I don't know yet. Send the unit no sirens until you hit Millers Creek. I'll meet you at the trailhead. He was already running back. When he pushed through the tree line, Duke was on his feet. Standing now, not sitting, facing northwest, the direction the forest deepened. His tail was low and his ears were at full forward, and Marcus felt the hair on his own arm stand up. Talk to me, Duke. Duke did not look at him. Duke. The dog glanced back for exactly 1 second, then returned his gaze to the trees. Dana Flores was watching the dog too. He's been like that for about 2 minutes, she said. Since you left. You counted? Old habit. She tried to shift and couldn't hold back the sound it pulled out of her. I don't think they followed me this far, but I've been wrong before. Marcus knelt beside her and opened the kit. Tell me about the drive while I work. You don't have clearance for what's on that drive. I'm not asking for clearance. I'm asking you to keep talking, so you stay conscious. She looked at him for a moment, and he could feel her calculating him the way people did when they were deciding how much to trust someone they had met 4 minutes ago while bleeding into the dirt. "It's an arms operation," she said finally. "Multi-year, multi-country. The buyers are domestic. That's all I'm going to say. Domestic as in people who are supposed to be on our side." She flinched as he worked on the shoulder wound. "The drive has financial records, communications, 4 years of it. My team has been building this case since before I joined. If those files disappear, there's nothing. No case, no charges, no accountability for anyone. And the people who took it, do they know what they have? They know exactly what they have. That's why they shot me instead of just running." Marcus tied off the wound at her shoulder with practiced hands and moved to her side. This one was worse. He had known it was worse from the first look, but knowing and seeing up close were two different things. "You're going to feel some pressure," he said. "I've been feeling pressure for 2 hours. More pressure." She did not make a sound. He respected that. He worked as fast as he was able to, and Duke held his position, and the forest around them was quiet, and that quiet was doing something to Marcus's instincts that he did not like. Quiet forests made noise. Birds, wind squirrels dropping things. This section of trees had gone completely still. He looked at Duke. Duke's head dropped 2 inches, slow, deliberate. The same drop Marcus had seen before, calls that went bad. "Dana," Marcus said very quietly. "When I tell you to stay flat, you stay flat. You do not move, you do not call out, you do not make any sound. Do you understand me?" She understood. He could see it in her face the way the calculation disappeared and pure training took over. "How many?" she whispered. "I don't know." He had his hand on his weapon now. "But my dog doesn't lie." Duke shifted his weight to his back legs. The forest breathed, and something moved in the dark between the trees. Marcus did not draw his weapon yet. He had learned early in his career that the second you pull iron, everything accelerates in a direction you cannot always control. So he kept his hand on the grip, and his eyes on Duke, and he waited because Duke would tell him when. Duke told him. The dog launched forward without a sound. No bark, no warning growl, just pure velocity into the dark space between the trees, and Marcus was 2 steps behind him before he consciously decided to move. There was a crash, a shout. Something heavy hit the ground. Marcus came through the tree line with his weapon drawn and found Duke standing over a man who was face down in the mud, the dog's front paws planted between the man's shoulder blades, 70 pounds of German Shepherd pinning him like a paperweight. The man was not armed. Or rather, he had been armed. His gun was 3 feet away where it had landed when Duke took him down. "Don't move," Marcus said. "Don't even breathe wrong. Get the dog off me." "That's not how this works." Marcus kicked the gun further away and grabbed the man's wrists, cuffing them with the zip ties he kept in his vest pocket. "How many of you are out here?" The man said nothing. Duke pressed harder. "How many?" "2." The word came out strangled. "There were 2 of us." Marcus looked up. The trees were still. No movement. No sound. But 2 meant 1 more somewhere. "Where's your partner?" "I don't know. We split up." "You split up to find her?" Silence. "You split up to find the FBI agent you already shot twice." Marcus kept his voice flat. "And now your partner is out there, and I have 1 set of hands, and you're going to tell me exactly where he went. I want a lawyer. You'll get one. Right after the ambulance gets here and takes the woman you left bleeding in the woods. Until then, you're going to stay right where you are." Marcus pressed his radio. "Dispatch, this is Hale. I have 1 subject in custody at my position. I need backup now. Repeat backup now. 1 additional subject unaccounted for in the same area. Copy 4471. Units en route. ETA 6 minutes. 6 minutes. Marcus looked back toward Dana. 6 minutes was 6 minutes. He could not leave her alone. He could not take his eyes off the man on the ground. He could not chase a ghost through a forest with no backup and no information. He made the only call he could make. "Duke, back to her." Duke looked at him. "Go. Guard her. Go." The dog hesitated for exactly 1 second, the way he sometimes did when he disagreed with an order, but respected the chain of command enough to follow it anyway. Then he turned and pushed back through the trees toward Dana. Marcus kept his weapon on the man in the mud. "What is on that drive?" "Nothing. You shot a federal agent twice, and you're sitting in the mud in the middle of a Virginia forest. Whatever you were being paid, it wasn't enough. So let's have a conversation about what changes for you if you start helping me right now." The man turned his head just enough to look at Marcus with one eye. He was older than Marcus expected, mid-40s, with the kind of face that had seen real work at some point in its life. Not a hired hand. Someone who knew what he was doing. "You have no idea what you walked into, kid." "I'm starting to figure it out." "No, you're not." The man's voice dropped, and what came out of it was not a threat exactly, but something colder than a threat. "Walk away from this. Take your dog and walk away. File a report about the woman, let the system handle it. You don't want to be in the middle of this." "I'm already in the middle of it." "Then I feel sorry for you." Marcus heard a branch snap somewhere to his left. He spun. Nothing. He spun back to the man on the ground. The man had not moved, but he was smiling now, and that smile was the worst thing Marcus had seen all morning, because it was the smile of someone who knew something that Marcus did not. "Your backup better drive fast," the man said. Marcus was already moving back toward Dana. He pushed through the trees and found Duke standing over her, stiff-legged, facing south. Dana had pushed herself up against the tree trunk into something closer to sitting. She had Marcus's first aid kit open beside her and had done something to the bandaging on her side that showed field training clean and efficient, despite the fact that her hands were shaking. "There's another one," Marcus said. "I know. I heard the first one go down." She looked at Duke. "Your dog has been facing that direction for 90 seconds. South. That's toward the creek." "Is there a road down there?" "Old logging road. Hasn't been maintained in years, but you can get a vehicle on it if you know what you're doing." Marcus crouched beside her. "Can you move? Right now, can you move?" "I can try." "That's not what I asked." She met his eyes. "Yes, I can move." He got her arm over his shoulder, and she stood, and the sound she made when she came upright was the sound of someone who had been trained to absorb pain until it was just information, just data, to be filed and processed and moved past. Duke stayed on her left side, pressing against her leg, and she let him her free hand, finding his vest. They moved toward the trail. She was slower than Marcus wanted her to be, but faster than he expected her to be, and every few steps she recalibrated her breathing in a way that told him she had done this before, moved while damaged. Kept going when stopping felt more possible than continuing. "How did they find you?" Marcus asked, keeping his voice low. "I don't know. I had a secure meet scheduled. Either the location was compromised or my contact was." "Your contact?" "Someone inside." She paused on a step and recovered. "That's the part I haven't figured out yet. That's the part that scares me more than the bullet." "You think someone on your team gave you up?" "I think it's possible. I think it's possible enough that I can't use my official channels until I know who I'm talking to." She looked at him. "That's why I didn't want you calling it in on the radio. Open channels get monitored. Not just by the bad guys. By people who might pass information to the bad guys without ever being in the same room as one." Marcus absorbed that. He kept moving. "The drive. Where is it now?" "They have it. The men who shot me took it. But they don't have everything." He looked at her. "I kept a backup," Dana said. "I'm not stupid. The drive they took has the financial records and the communication logs. What they don't know is that I memorized the key encryption sequence before I went in. Without that sequence, the files on the drive are unreadable. They took a very expensive paperweight. So they need you alive." She almost smiled. Which is the only reason I'm still breathing. When they realized I was gone, they sent those two to find me, not to finish the job. They needed me to give them the sequence. Which you were never going to do. Which I was never going to do. Duke stopped walking. Marcus stopped too. Dana stopped because Marcus did. For 3 seconds, nobody moved. Then a man stepped out from behind a tree 20 feet ahead of them, and he had a gun, and it was pointed at Dana, and his hand was steady in a way that told Marcus this was not his first time holding a weapon on someone. "Agent Flores," the man said. He was calm, almost polite. "You've had a rough morning. Let's end it." Marcus put himself between the gun and Dana before he finished the sentence. "I'm a police officer," he said. "Crestfield PD. You are currently pointing a firearm at a law enforcement officer and a federal agent. Backup is 60 seconds out. Put the weapon down." "I'm not here for you, officer." "You're here for her. And she's behind me, so you're here for me." Marcus kept his hands visible, kept his voice level, kept every training instinct he had firing at full capacity. 60 seconds. That's all you have before this forest fills with badges. Is whatever they're paying you worth a federal weapons charge, aggravated assault, attempted murder of an FBI agent? Because that is what you are looking at right now. The man's eyes moved to Dana. "The sequence," he said. "Give me the sequence, and I walk away. No one else gets hurt." "You already hurt someone," Dana said from behind Marcus. "Twice. I can hurt someone more." Duke had gone completely silent. Not the alert silence, not the guard silence. The other kind. The kind that came right before he moved. Marcus felt it. He knew that stillness. He had trained for it and worked beside it for 3 years, and he knew what came next. He shifted his weight 2 inches to the right. Duke exploded left. The man fired. The shot went wide, and Duke hit him at chest height and took him down hard, and Marcus was on top of them both in 4 steps. Gun out, knee on the man's chest, weapon kicked away. "Down. Stay down. Do not move." The man was not moving. Duke had his forearm and was not letting go. "Duke, release." Duke released. Marcus had the second set of zip ties on the man's wrists before the adrenaline had even peaked in his own bloodstream. He stood and turned back to Dana. She was still on her feet. Barely. Her face had gone the color of old paper, and she was using the nearest tree as a wall, but she was standing and she was looking at Duke with an expression Marcus had seen before on people who encountered his dog for the first time in a crisis. It was not surprise exactly. It was something closer to recognition. Like she was seeing something she already believed in finally proved. "He okay?" she asked. Marcus checked Duke, fast hands running over the dog's chest and sides. "He's fine. The shot missed." He looked up at her. "You okay?" "Define okay." "Standing, breathing, yes or no?" "Yes." She pushed off the tree. "Barely." Sirens reached them from the direction of Millers Creek Road, distant but closing fast, and Marcus felt the tension in his shoulders drop exactly 1 degree, which was all it ever dropped in the field. Enough to function, not enough to stop. "Your backup," Dana said. "Our backup," he said. She looked at him. "You said you can't use your official channels until you know who you're talking to. That's fine. You don't have to." He reached down and put his hand on Duke's head. "But you're not alone out here anymore. That's done." Dana Flores had been shot twice, had spent 2 hours against a pine tree, had faced down a man with a gun on a bad leg and a worse shoulder, and she had not broken once. But something in what Marcus said did something to her face that 2 bullets and 2 hours of cold had not managed to do. She looked away. Looked toward the sound of the sirens. Took 1 slow breath. "The drive they took," she said quietly. "Even without the encryption key, there are people who can work on it. People with resources and time. We have maybe 72 hours before someone smart enough to break the encryption gets their hands on it. Then we have 72 hours, Marcus said. She turned back. You don't even know what we're up against. No, he admitted. But Duke does. The German Shepherd looked up at both of them, tongue out, completely unbothered, as if taking down two armed men before breakfast was simply another Tuesday morning on the Ridge Trail. The first patrol car hit the logging road with its lights blazing. And somewhere on the other side of the forest, the people who had sent two men to silence Dana Flores were about to find out that they had miscalculated badly. They had counted on a woman alone in the woods with no backup and no way out. They had not counted on a K-9 officer who refused to keep running. They had not counted on Duke. The paramedics wanted Dana on the stretcher immediately. Dana wanted the paramedics to back up and give her 60 seconds, which was not a request, and they figured that out fast. I need to make a call before you put me in that unit, she said. One call, 2 minutes. The lead paramedic looked at Marcus. Marcus looked at Dana. Dana was already holding out her hand for his cell phone, and her face made it very clear that this was going to happen whether the paramedics cooperated or not. Marcus handed her the phone. She dialed from memory. 7 digits, no hesitation. The call connected on the second ring, and whoever answered did not say hello, and Dana did not say hello either. It's Flores. I'm compromised. Do not use primary channels. I need you to flag the Cedar Fork retrieval as a dead drop and pull the secondary contact list. A pause. No. Listen to me. The drive is in play. 72 hours, maybe less. Yes, I know. I know what that means. Get Reyes and no one else. Do you understand me? No one else. Another pause, longer this time, and whatever came through the line made Dana close her eyes for exactly 3 seconds. I understand. Do what you can. She handed the phone back to Marcus. Reyes, he said. My supervisor. One of 2 people on my team I still trust completely. She finally let the paramedic guide her toward the stretcher. The other one is currently somewhere in the Pacific, so Reyes is what we have. What did he say that made you close your eyes like that? Dana looked at him sharply. I'm a cop, Marcus said. I read people. What did he say? She settled onto the stretcher and stared at the tree canopy above her for a moment before she answered. He said the man who was supposed to be my contact at the meet this morning called in sick 2 days ago. Someone else took his place. Someone no one can identify yet. The weight of that landed between them. So the leak was at the contact level, Marcus said. Or above it. The contact was compromised, which means whoever set this up had access to at least that level of the operation. She looked at him. These are not small people, Marcus. The men you cuffed today, they are foot soldiers. The people above them have offices and titles and the kind of reputation that makes investigations disappear. One of the patrol officers, a younger guy Marcus knew from the precinct, named Cho, stepped close. Hale, Sergeant wants to know what we're dealing with. How do you want to play this? Marcus thought about open channels. He thought about Dana's 30-second speech in the woods. He thought about the man in the mud who told him to walk away with the confidence of someone who believed that walking away was genuinely still an option. Tell Sergeant Alvarez I'll debrief in person at the hospital. Keep the 2 subjects separated and get them processed through the county building, not the Crestfield station. Log the arrests under the standard framework for now. Cho looked uncertain. That's a little unusual, Hale. Yeah, it is. Marcus held his gaze. Trust me for about 4 hours, and then everything will make more sense. Cho nodded slowly and went back to his radio. Marcus turned back to Dana. The paramedics were ready to move her. Duke was sitting beside the stretcher with the patience of a dog who had decided that wherever this woman went, he was going with her. Logistics be figured out later. He can ride with me, Dana asked, looking at Duke. He goes where I go, Marcus said. And I'm going with you. The paramedic opened his mouth. Marcus showed his badge. The paramedic closed his mouth. They loaded Dana into the unit, and Duke jumped in before anyone invited him, and Marcus climbed in behind, and the doors closed, and the siren started, and Dana Flores, who had held herself together through 2 bullets, and 2 armed men, and 2 hours alone in the cold, finally let herself lie back and breathe. Duke put his chin on the edge of the stretcher beside her hand. She did not move her hand away. "You trained him yourself?" she asked. Her voice was quieter now, not weaker exactly, just lower the way voices got when the immediate danger passed and the body started tallying what it had spent. "From 8 weeks old," Marcus said. "He was a rescue from the shelter program. They almost washed him out. Too aggressive in the kennel, they said. Wouldn't settle." "What changed?" "Me, mostly. He needed someone who wasn't afraid of how much he had in him. Once he trusted that I wasn't going to back down from him, he stopped fighting everything and started working." Marcus watched Duke watching Dana. "Best decision I ever made." Dana was quiet for a moment. "I had a dog growing up, Shepherd Mix. She used to sleep across the doorway to my room every night. My mother used to say she was guarding me." A pause. "I used to think that was just something dogs did. I don't think that anymore." "No," Marcus agreed. "It's not just something they do." The hospital came up fast. They moved Dana through intake at a pace that suggested someone had called ahead with the right words, because the usual waiting room shuffle did not happen. She was in a treatment bay within 4 minutes, and a surgeon Marcus did not recognize was already reviewing the imaging the paramedics had transmitted en route, and the controlled urgency in the room told Marcus that the wound in her side was more serious than Dana's performance had let on. He stepped outside the bay. Duke sat beside him. Marcus leaned against the wall and pulled out his phone and stood there for a long moment just breathing. His hands were steady. They were always steady in the field. It was after the field that they sometimes reminded him what the field had cost. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. He almost let it go to voicemail. Something made him answer. "Officer Hale." The voice was male, measured the voice of someone who chose each word the way a chess player chose each move. "You've had quite a morning." Marcus straightened off the wall. "Who is this?" "Someone who would like to have a conversation before you make decisions that are difficult to walk back. You're going to want to identify yourself." "I will. In person. There is a coffee shop called Brewers on the corner of 4th and Clement. I'll be there in 40 minutes. I'd like you to come alone. And if I don't..." A pause. Measured, not nervous. "Then I'll have the same conversation with someone else. Someone who does not have your particular instinct for doing the right thing. And the outcome of that conversation will be significantly worse for Agent Flores." The line went dead. Marcus stared at his phone. Duke was looking up at him. "I know," Marcus said quietly. He went back into the bay. The surgeon was gone, probably scrubbing in. A nurse was adjusting Dana's IV, and Dana was awake lying flat, now her color still wrong, but her eyes still sharp. "Someone just called me," Marcus said. "Unknown number. Male voice, very controlled. He knew my name, he knew about you, and he wants to meet me alone in 40 minutes. Dana's eyes sharpened further. "What exactly did he say?" Marcus repeated it word for word. He had a good memory. It was the part of the job he appreciated most about himself. Dana was quiet for 3 full seconds. "Don't go." He said, "If I don't, he talks to someone else and the outcome is worse for you. He's manipulating you. That's what they do. They find the pressure point and they push." Her jaw tightened. "You are the pressure point, Marcus. You saved my life and now they're going to use that against you. Or he's telling the truth and there's information I need. Or he puts you in the ground and there's one less witness." Marcus looked at Duke. Duke was watching him with the calm, complete attention that the dog reserved for moments when Marcus was about to make a choice. "I'm not walking in there blind," Marcus said. "I'm walking in there with a plan." You don't have a plan. You've had this phone call for 90 seconds. Then give me 38 minutes. She stared at him. You said there are two people you trust completely, he said. Reyes is working the case. Who's the second one? She's in the Pacific. Can you reach her? It's a classified deployment, Marcus. I understand that. Can you reach her? Dana looked at the ceiling. The kind of look that meant the answer was yes, but the answer came with complications she was already calculating. There's an emergency contact protocol. It takes time and it draws attention. Then start it now. Because whoever just called me is not a foot soldier. The men in the woods, they were foot soldiers. This voice was something else. He held her gaze. And I think you know who it might be. The silence that followed was the loudest thing Marcus had heard all morning. There is one name, Dana said finally. Her voice had dropped to something barely above a whisper, and the nurse quietly finished what she was doing and stepped out of the bay without being asked, which told Marcus that the nurse understood the room. A name that came up in the financial records, not directly, indirectly through 3 layers of holding companies and 2 offshore accounts. We never had enough to move on it, but the name is there. What's the name? She told him. Marcus knew the name. Everybody in Virginia law enforcement knew that name. He did not react on the outside. On the inside, something shifted into place with the cold, specific weight of a thing that changes the entire shape of a situation. Because the name Dana Flores said was not the name of a criminal. It was the name of someone who signed off on budgets and attended charity dinners and had a photograph on the wall of the state attorney general's office. You're sure? He said. I'm sure of the money trail. I'm not sure of anything else yet. Marcus looked at his phone. 37 minutes. Make the call to your contact, he said. Use the emergency protocol. Tell them what I told you about the phone call. He straightened. And tell them I'm going to the meeting. Marcus, I'm going to the meeting because he doesn't know what I know yet, and the minute he figures out that you told me that name, everything changes. Right now, I have a window. He looked at Duke. We have a window. You are not taking your dog into a potential trap. Duke goes where I go. He is a police K-9, not a suicide vest. He's my partner. Marcus clipped the leash. And he's the reason you're alive right now, so with respect, Agent Flores, I think I'll trust his judgment over just about anyone else's today. Dana looked at the dog. Duke looked back at her with those amber eyes that did not know how to be anything other than what they were. If something happens to you, she said, nothing is going to happen to me. That is the most naive sentence you've said all morning. Probably. He moved toward the door. But I've been running this trail for 2 years, and I never found anything. Today Duke stopped, and I followed him, and now I'm standing in the middle of something that matters. He paused at the threshold. I don't think that was an accident. He walked out before she could answer. Duke walked beside him, steady and sure, and the hospital corridor opened up ahead of them, and somewhere across town, a man with a controlled voice and a dangerous name was sitting in a coffee shop, waiting for a 25-year-old patrol officer to walk through the door. He had no idea what was actually about to walk through that door. Brewers on 4th and Clement was the kind of place that looked ordinary on purpose. Marcus knew it. He had stopped there twice after night shifts, bad coffee, and decent pie. The kind of neighborhood spot that did not attract attention, because attracting attention was never its goal. That was exactly why someone had chosen it. He pushed through the door with Duke at his left side and scanned the room the way he always scanned rooms, now fast, systematic cataloging exits and sightlines, and the weight of every person present before his eyes landed on the man in the far booth. The man did not look up immediately. He was reading something on his phone, unhurried, a cup of coffee on the table in front of him. Late 50s, silver hair, the kind of posture that came from decades of being the most important person in every room he entered. Dark jacket, no tie. He looked like someone's grandfather. He looked like someone's senator. He looked like exactly the name Dana had given Marcus 40 minutes ago. Deputy Director Warren Lyle, 14-year veteran of federal oversight, The man whose signature appeared on 3 separate budget authorizations that fed money into accounts connected to the arms operation Dana had spent 4 years trying to expose. The man who was supposed to be on their side. Marcus crossed the room and slid into the booth across from him. Duke sat beside the booth facing out, watching everyone else. Lyle looked up from his phone. He looked at Marcus. He looked at Duke. He set the phone face down on the table. "You brought the dog," he said. "He goes where I go. I asked you to come alone. And I came. Duke doesn't count as company. He counts as equipment." Marcus put both hands flat on the table. "You know my name. I know yours. So let's skip the part where you decide how much to tell me and just have the real conversation." Something moved behind Lyle's eyes. Not surprise. Recalculation. "You've spoken to Flores," he said. "She's in surgery. We didn't have a lot of time to chat. But she told you enough." Marcus said nothing. Lyle picked up his coffee, took a slow sip. The deliberateness of it was its own kind of message, the message being that whatever Marcus thought he had walked in here with Lyle had seen it before and was not particularly impressed. "You're 25 years old," Lyle said. "You've been on the force for 3 years. Your record is clean, your evaluations are excellent, and until this morning, you were the kind of officer who was going to have a long, quiet, respectable career." He set the cup down. "I want to help you keep that. You want to help me. I want to give you a way out of something you do not fully understand. Then explain it to me." Lyle leaned forward slightly. "What Agent Flores told you, whatever version of this story she gave you, is incomplete. The operation she was investigating is not what she thinks it is. The financial connections she found are real, but the interpretation she's built around them is wrong. What she called an arms network is actually a classified interdiction program. Off-book, yes. Imperfect, yes. But it has prevented 4 significant domestic attacks in the last 2 years that you will never read about in any newspaper." Marcus listened. He kept his face neutral. He was very good at keeping his face neutral. "The drive she was carrying," Lyle continued, "contains evidence that if made public or submitted to the wrong channels would expose active assets and ongoing operations. People would die, Officer Hale. Real people in real places, because a well-intentioned agent built a case around data she did not have full context for. And the men who shot her," Marcus said carefully, "they were protecting the classified program. They overreacted. That is being addressed internally. She has 2 bullet wounds. I am aware of that, and I regret it, genuinely." Lyle's voice carried something that might have been real regret, and that was the most unsettling part of the conversation so far, the possibility that some of what he was saying was true. But the solution is not to blow open a classified program and call it justice. The solution is to bring Flores in, debrief her properly, and make sure she understands what she was actually looking at. And the drive. The drive needs to come back to the people who can contextualize what's on it. "The people who already have it, you mean?" Lyle paused. One beat. The first crack in the measured surface. "The drive is in secure custody," he said. "Whose me? Mine." Marcus looked at him. "You have it." "As of 2 hours ago, yes." "The men you sent to find Dana Flores?" "The men I sent to retrieve the drive. Finding Agent Flores was secondary." "She has 2 bullet wounds." "I heard you the first time." Duke shifted beside the booth. Just slightly. Just enough that Marcus felt it. "Here is what I think," Marcus said. He kept his voice the same way Lyle kept his level, measured, each word chosen. "I think you are very good at this. I think you have been doing this for a long time, and you are very good at building the version of the story that makes the person across the table feel like cooperation is the reasonable choice." He paused. "I also think you called me instead of letting this morning disappear into a report because something went wrong with your plan, and you needed to know how much I knew before you figured out your next move." The silence that followed was different from the silences before it. Lyle looked at Marcus for a long moment. You're smarter than your file suggested. Most people are. What do you want, Officer Hale? I want Dana Flores to survive the next 72 hours. She will. I want the people who shot her to answer for it in a courtroom. That may be complicated. I want the drive reviewed by people who do not report to you. Lyle set both hands on the table. You are not in a position to make those demands. Maybe not. Marcus held his gaze. But the person I called before I walked in here might be. He watched Lyle's face very carefully when he said it, watched for the tell. The slight tightening around the eyes, the micropause before the next breath. He saw it. You made a call, Lyle said. I made a call. To whom? Someone Dana trusts. Someone who apparently has the kind of clearance that makes people like you answer the phone on the first ring. Marcus let that sit. I gave them this address this time and your name, about 20 minutes ago. Lyle was still. The stillness of a man doing very fast math. You're bluffing, he said. Marcus said nothing. Duke made a low sound, not a growl, something quieter and more certain. Lyle's phone buzzed on the table. He looked at it. Something happened to his face that Marcus had not seen from him yet. Not recalculation, not performance. Something real moving underneath the controlled surface like a current under ice. He did not answer the phone. It buzzed again. You should probably get that, Marcus said. Lyle picked it up. Whatever he saw on the screen made him set it back down with a care that looked almost gentle, the way you set something down when you are trying very hard not to show that your hands want to shake. Reyes, he said quietly. I don't know who called you, Marcus said, but I know it wasn't nobody. The coffee shop moved around them. A waitress refilled the cup 2 tables over. Someone laughed near the door. Ordinary life, completely indifferent to the fact that something was breaking open in the far booth. Lyle looked at Marcus with an expression that had finally dropped most of its architecture. What was underneath was not evil exactly. That was the thing about real corruption Marcus had come to understand. It was rarely evil in its own eyes. It was compromise and justification and small decisions that grew until they were no longer small, and by then the person making them had built an entire internal structure to explain why the decisions were necessary and even right. What was underneath Warren Lyle's architecture looked more than anything else like a man who was tired. The program is real, Lyle said. His voice was different now, lower, the performance register gone. Everything I told you about it is true. The interdiction work is real, and it has saved lives. And the arms sales that fund it, Marcus said. Are those real too? The silence confirmed it. The program needed resources that official channels would not authorize, Lyle said. Oversight committees, budget hearings, the whole process, it takes too long. Things happen in the world while the committees are scheduling their meetings. So decisions were made. Who made them? People above my pay grade. I inherited the structure. I kept it running because the alternative was watching it collapse and taking everything it had accomplished with it. He looked at his hands. That is not an excuse. I know it is not an excuse. But it is the truth. The drive has everything. The real everything, not the version I described to you. He paused. If it goes to the right people, not compromised people, actual oversight, it ends the program. It probably ends several careers, including mine. But the arms pipeline gets shut down, and the domestic buyers face charges. And if it goes to the wrong people, it disappears, and the pipeline keeps running, and Dana Flores has an unfortunate relapse in surgery. He said it flatly without flourish, and the flatness made it worse. There are people in this structure who are not as tired as I am, who are not sitting in coffee shops having honest conversations with patrol officers. Marcus felt the room sharpen. You're telling me you're not the most dangerous person in this. I am telling you I am not the only dangerous person in this, and some of the others know by now that the morning did not go as planned. Lyle looked up. Where is Flores exactly? I'm not telling you that. I'm not asking to threaten her. I'm asking because if the people I'm describing decide she is a liability rather than an asset, hospital security is not going to be adequate." The sentence landed like something cold and heavy. Marcus was already reaching for his phone. He called Cho's direct line. "Hey, I need you to do something for me right now. No questions until later. Get a plainclothes unit into Crestfield General. Patient under the name Flores. Don't put it on the radio. Walk in personally and make it happen." "Marcus, what is going on?" 4 hours. Just give me 4 hours and I will explain everything. Can you do this?" A pause. "Yeah, I got you. Thank you." He hung up. Lyle was watching him. "You trust that officer?" "With my life, and apparently with hers." Marcus put the phone on the table. "The drive. Where exactly is it?" "My office in the federal building, locked in a personal safe. The combination is not in any system, only I know it." "Then you're going to take me there." Lyle looked at him for a long time. "If I do that," he said slowly, "there is no version of this where I walk away clean." "There was never going to be a version where you walked away clean," Marcus said. "The only question left is whether you walk away at all, or whether the people above you decide you're the next loose end." He leaned forward. "They already know the morning went wrong. They already know the patrol officer and the FBI agent are alive. How long before they decide that a deputy director who knows everything is more of a risk than an asset?" Lyle's jaw worked. He picked up his coffee and found it empty and set it back down. "The dog," he said, finally looking at Duke. "Does he bite?" "Only when I tell him to. And if I make the wrong move. He doesn't need me to tell him everything." Lyle almost smiled. It was a sad expression, the smile of a man who had arrived somewhere he always knew he was going to arrive and was only now admitting it. He picked up his jacket from the seat beside him and stood slowly. "My car is out back," he said. "We'll take mine," Marcus said. They walked out together, Duke between them, through the ordinary coffee shop and into the ordinary afternoon, and nobody looked at them twice, and the city moved around them the way cities always did, completely unaware that the thread of something enormous was being pulled and would not stop until the whole structure came undone. Marcus's hand was near his weapon. He did not think he would need it. He was not certain enough of that to move the hand away. His phone buzzed in his pocket. He checked it without breaking stride. A text from an unknown number, 3 words. "She's awake, talking." He did not know if that meant Dana was out of surgery or something else. Something worse. A different kind of talking. The kind that happened when someone with authority and bad intentions sat beside a hospital bed and asked the right questions. He walked faster. Duke matched him, stride for stride. And Warren Lyle, former deputy director and reluctant architect of 4 years of sanctioned crime, followed them both toward the parking lot without another word, because there was nothing left to say, and they all knew it. The federal building was 12 minutes away. Marcus drove like it was 10. The federal building's parking structure was half empty on a Saturday afternoon, and that was the only thing that went smoothly in the first 90 seconds. Marcus pulled in and killed the engine and looked at Lyle in the passenger seat. Lyle had not spoken for 11 of the 12 minutes it took to get there. The one time he had spoken it was to say that there was a side entrance that bypassed the main security desk, which meant fewer cameras and fewer people who would see a deputy director walking in with a patrol officer and a German shepherd. Marcus had taken the side entrance. Now they were sitting in the parking structure, and Lyle was looking at the building the way a man looked at something he had spent years inside and was only now seeing clearly from the outside. "When we go in," Marcus said, "you walk normally. You do not signal anyone. You do not make any call. You do not deviate from the route to the safe. If you do any of those things, Duke will know before I do." "I understand. I need to hear it stated plainly." Lyle looked at him. "I will take you directly to the safe. I will open it. I will hand you the drive." He paused. "I am done protecting this." They got out of the car. Duke stayed tight to Marcus's left, as they moved through the side entrance down a corridor that hummed with the particular silence of a government building on a weekend, past a security officer who nodded at Lyle without looking at the badge clipped to Marcus's chest or the K9 at his side. The nod of someone accustomed to seeing power walk past them and trained not to ask questions about it. Marcus noted the man's face, made the mental note. Lyle's office was on the 4th floor. The elevator ride took 22 seconds and felt like 4 minutes. When the doors opened, the corridor was empty. They walked to the 3rd door on the right. Lyle used a keycard. The lock clicked. He pushed the door open and stepped in first, and Marcus followed with his hand on Duke's vest ready. The office was exactly what it was. A desk, a credenza. A framed commendation on the wall that Marcus did not read. A painting that probably cost more than Marcus's truck. And in the corner built into the wall behind a panel that looked like part of the trim A safe. Lyle crossed to it without hesitating. His hands moved to the panel. He pressed 4 points in a specific sequence, and the panel swung outward, revealing the safe behind it. He paused with his hands on the combination dial. "Once I open this," he said, "I want something from you." Marcus kept his eyes on Lyle's hands. "You are not in a position to negotiate." "I'm not negotiating. I'm asking." He turned to look at Marcus. "There are 2 other people in this building whose names are in the files on that drive. Not foot soldiers, not hired hands. People with offices on floors above this one who will know within the hour what happened in this room." He held Marcus's gaze. "I need you to understand that when this opens up, it opens up fast, and it opens up in directions you are not expecting. You need to be ready for that. Open the safe, Deputy Director." Lyle turned back. His hands worked the combination. The dial moved in 3 deliberate rotations, and then the handle turned, and then the door swung open. The drive was inside, small, gray, unremarkable. The kind of object that had no visible relationship to the size of what it contained. Lyle picked it up and held it out. Marcus took it. The moment his hand closed around it, his phone rang. He answered without looking at the number. He knew who it was. "Tell me she's okay," he said. Dana's voice came through thin and careful. The voice of someone who was still working around pain, but was functional and present and very much herself. "I'm out of surgery. Don't celebrate yet. There is a man in the hallway outside my room who is not Cho's officer." Marcus's hand tightened on the drive. "Describe him." "Tall, gray jacket. He hasn't come in yet, but he's been standing there for 6 minutes, and he checked his phone twice after looking at my door." Marcus looked at Lyle. Lyle's face had gone very still. "Do you know who that is?" Marcus asked him. Lyle closed his eyes for exactly 1 second. "Assistant Director Crane. He would have been notified when I used my keycard." "He's at the hospital," Marcus said. The stillness broke. Lyle straightened in a way that was less resignation and more something older and harder rising to the surface. "Then we are out of time. Give me your phone." "That's not happening. Crane has 2 levels of access above mine. If he decides that Agent Flores does not leave that hospital in a condition to testify, there is nothing hospital security or your officer friend can do about it. But there are exactly 3 people in this system who can freeze Crane's authority in the next 4 minutes, and I have their direct lines." He held out his hand. "Give me the phone." Marcus looked at him, looked at Duke. Duke was watching Lyle with complete attention and no alarm, and Marcus had learned years ago that the dog was not a perfect instrument, but he was an honest one. He handed over the phone. Lyle dialed from memory. The call connected in under 5 seconds. "This is Lyle authorization code November 7 Romeo 4. I need an immediate access suspension on Assistant Director Crane Jacob A. pending internal review. Yes, now. This is not a request." A pause. "I understand the protocol. Initiate it anyway. My credentials are on the line, not yours." He listened for 10 seconds. "Thank you." He handed the phone back. 40 seconds, he said. After that, Crane's credentials go dark until someone with more authority than either of us reverses it. Marcus was already texting Cho. Gray jacket tall outside Flores's room. Detain him, now. Do not let him make a call. Cho's response came in 11 seconds. 3 letters. Got him. The room was very quiet. Marcus looked at the drive in his hand. He looked at Warren Lyle, who was standing in his own office, in front of an open safe, looking at a commendation on the wall that had probably once meant something to him. "The 3 names you just called," Marcus said. "They are clean. As clean as anyone gets in this system." "Good enough." Marcus pocketed the drive. "Then here is what happens next. You call Reyes at the FBI directly. You give him your full cooperation, your authorization codes, and the names of every person connected to this operation. You do not talk to a lawyer first. You do not make any other calls first. You pick up that desk phone right now, and you call Reyes. And in return, I tell the prosecutor that you cooperated voluntarily and that your cooperation directly prevented further harm to a federal agent. That is not immunity, but it is something." Lyle looked at the desk phone. Something moved across his face that Marcus did not have a clean word for. It was not relief exactly. It was not regret exactly. It was what happened when a man who had been carrying something enormous for a very long time finally put it down, and his body had not yet figured out how to stand without the weight. He picked up the phone. He dialed Reyes. Marcus stepped back and let him talk, and Duke sat beside him, and the afternoon light came through the window at an angle that made everything in the room look like it was already in the past, already becoming the version of events that would be written down and argued over, and eventually settled into record. 17 minutes later, 3 FBI vehicles pulled into the federal building parking structure. Reyes arrived in the second one. He was a compact man in his late 40s, with gray at his temples, and the eyes of someone who had trained himself to assess a situation completely before he showed any reaction to it. He shook Marcus's hand in a way that conveyed more than a handshake usually did. He looked at Duke. "This is the dog," Reyes said. "This is Duke," Marcus said. Reyes crouched and let Duke sniff his hand, and Duke approved, and Reyes stood back up. "Flores says he didn't leave her side." "He doesn't leave anyone's side who needs him." Reyes nodded slowly. "The drive." Marcus handed it over. Reyes held it the way you held something that you had spent 4 years looking for and had not been certain you would ever find. He did not say anything for a moment. He did not need to. "Lyle," he said finally, looking at the deputy director who was sitting in a chair by the desk with the posture of a man who had already surrendered and was simply waiting for the paperwork to catch up. "I'll tell you everything," Lyle said. "All of it." Reyes looked back at Marcus. "How did you know to call the emergency line Dana's secondary contact? That line does not exist in any public record." "Dana told me to make a call," Marcus said. "She activated the protocol from the hospital. I just walked in the direction she pointed." "She pointed you at a deputy director in a coffee shop." "She pointed me at the truth. The deputy director came with it." Reyes looked at him for a moment with an expression that Marcus could not fully read and did not try to. Then he turned to his team, and the room became organized and purposeful, and Marcus stepped back because the part that belonged to him was done. He walked out into the corridor. He leaned against the wall. Duke sat on his feet. It was a thing the dog did sometimes when the noise stopped and the adrenaline dropped and the body remembered what the mind had been too busy to process. He just sat on Marcus's feet, all 70 pounds of him warm and solid and completely certain of his place in the world. Marcus reached down and put his hand on the dog's back. "Good boy," he said quietly. "You did good today." Duke leaned into his hand. His phone buzzed. "Dana." "Reyes has the drive," Marcus said when he answered. A breath on the other end, long and slow and full of 4 years of something finally releasing. Crane. In custody. Lyle is cooperating. Another breath. Marcus? Yeah. I need you to understand something. Her voice was steady, but there was something underneath it that was not steady. The something that people only let out when they had decided to trust completely. I have been doing this job for 6 years. I have worked with people who had more training, more resources, more clearance, more everything. And none of them were in that forest this morning. She paused. You were in that forest because your dog stopped running. Marcus looked down at Duke. Duke looked up at him. He always stops when it matters, Marcus said. So do you. He did not have an answer for that. He did not think one was required. He stayed on the wall until Reyes came back out and told him a debrief would be scheduled, and his cooperation would be formally noted, and that someone from the FBI's K-9 Commendation Office would be reaching out about Duke, and Marcus nodded to all of it, and meant none of his attention toward any of it, because his attention was on the drive that was no longer in his hand, and the woman in the hospital who was going to need weeks to recover, and the 2 men currently in county processing who had made the mistake of underestimating a morning run. He pushed off the wall. Duke stood with him. They walked to the elevator. They rode down in silence. They walked back through the side corridor and past the security officer, who did not look up this time either, and they pushed through the door into the open air. Marcus stood for a moment with the afternoon sun on his face. He thought about the trail, the roots and the bends and the sounds the forest made before sunrise. He thought about how many mornings he had run it without finding anything that needed him. He thought about how the best things in his life had arrived without announcement, without invitation, simply by being in the right place when something needed to happen. He thought about a German shepherd that a shelter had almost given up on. He thought about a woman against a pine tree who had used her last breath to say 4 words. He thought about how loyalty was not a complicated thing when you stripped everything else away. It was just the decision to stay, to not walk away when walking away was available, to follow when your gut said follow, and hold when your gut said hold, and trust the partner beside you even when you could not see what they were seeing. That was all it was. That was everything it was. Duke nudged his hand. I know, Marcus said. I know. Let's go check on her. They walked to the car together, the K-9 officer and his dog, 2 blocks from a federal building where 4 years of justice was being unpacked from a small gray drive. And the afternoon was ordinary around them, the way afternoons were always ordinary after extraordinary things, because the world did not pause for the moments that changed it. It just kept moving. And so did they. The system that had protected itself for 4 years was coming down one name at a time, one file at a time, one honest decision at a time. It would not happen cleanly, and it would not happen without cost, and there would be days ahead that were harder than today. But the drive was out of the safe. The people who had pulled the trigger were in custody. And a woman who had refused to stop fighting was alive in a hospital bed talking to the one man she trusted enough to hold the other end of her line. Sometimes justice did not arrive in a courtroom. Sometimes it arrived before sunrise on a muddy trail when a dog stopped running and a young officer refused to look the other way. Sometimes all it took was one person willing to stay. If this story moved something in you today, if it reminded you that loyalty and courage still walk among us in the most ordinary lives, then type Amen in the comments below. Let those words carry. Drop the name of your city and let me see how far this story has traveled. And if you are not subscribed yet, do it now, because the next story is already waiting, and it will find you exactly when you need it.